Just thought I'd show you this before the start of my video, ladies and gentlemen. This is after I record the video. Look at this. Come across a new friend today. And the interesting thing to know is that he has the same religion as you and I. He's a submitter to the Most High. He follows God, and he follows after what is natural and normal. Just as everything within this area, all the leaves, all the grass, all the trees, the whole of creation submits to God. It's only man who, even man, unwillingly, he submits to God. God gets everything to submit to him. It's just sometimes man will rebel in his soul, and God forces him into submission. This one, he's not forced into submission. He willingly submits. And it's interesting to know that him and I perhaps have more in common than the majority of men nowadays who rebel against their Lord, who are atheistic savages, because he is not an atheist savage. He is guided to the straightness of the way by God. Just thought I'd show you that. Very interesting, very beautiful. All right, peace to you, ladies and gentlemen. How are you? Now, in today's video, I want to speak about something I've noticed in the West at how parents deal with their children. Now, of course, whatever I say, you can take it with a grain of salt, because I'm not a father yet, right? I don't have that experience. I haven't gone to that point in my life yet. But I can use my logic and my reason and discern certain things that people do which I don't think may be the best for their children. And I juxtapose this to how people treat their children in the East as opposed to how they treat them in the West. And this was inspired by me and my wife. We were sitting down, we were watching a bunch of Afghani people, and how they raise their children. You know, certain, I don't want to say the word to not get censored, but certain types of people, predominantly Pashtun, very militant people, oftentimes Wahhabi. I like to call them towels. You should know what I mean. You know, certain people, let's call them the towel clan. Okay, the towel clan. That's enough for you to know. Yeah, so these towels, these people, I see how they raise their children and how we do in the West, and it's completely and totally different. And one thing I've noticed with the West is people cater to their children here. People spoil their children way too much. I noticed that they cater to the world of the child, whereas in places in the East, like in Pakistan, Afghanistan, all these places, the child is expected, especially the young man, he's expected to conform to the world of adults. Now, what do I mean by this? And this is not just with women, it's with men too. Fathers, they'll do this in the West. They'll be like, oh, you don't want to go here? You want to go there? No? And then the child will be whiny and pouty. You'll be like, no, you don't want to go there? Let's go here. Oh, you don't want ice cream? You want candy instead? Blah, 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 blah. They're like catering and pandering to the child.
Their vain desires.
Exactly, the vain desires of a child. When, in my estimation, my understanding, I think that a child should be, at the most earliest of age, forced to conform to reality, to what is logical, to what is reasonable, to what the scriptures uphold, to what the scriptures preach and teach, to what is the standards and the norms of the society. The child should be forced and encouraged to adopt the characteristics of the adult world, not the other way around, the adult world catering to the child. Do you want to go here? Do you want to go there? No. Oh no, he's crying. Oh no, no. You know, babying the child, babying. And I think to myself, wow, when you do this to a kid, there's no way this can have any good effect on the kid as they're growing up, you know, because you're at the earliest and most spongiest of years, when they're literally sponges. Their brains are just absorbing the outside stimulus from the world. You're teaching them the philosophy that the world is supposed to cater to you. And that's something I definitely do not do with my children. If God ever blesses me and my wife with kids, that's something I definitely don't want to do with our kids. Not at all. He's going to have to conform, not to my world, but to the real world. What is the real world? What the scriptures teach. He's going to be expected to do that at a young age, and even the woman as well. Now, I do believe that it's more natural for women to do that, women to kind of baby and coddle kids. It's because they have a more softer demeanor. Really, I'm talking about the men, the fathers, when they do this, when they cater to the child. I don't see how this can ever produce any good effect, you know? And, you know, it's just very different, like I said, to how the towels and people of Afghanistan, Pakistan, how they deal with their kids to how we do it here. And this kind of reflection I had, it got even more pronounced when I was looking into, so right now, in the part of the book which I'm completing in the Flat Earth Manifesto, I'm looking into NASA and its history, and I'm looking into Wernher von Braun. And Wernher von Braun, the father of the space age, the guy who was the founder of rocket technology in NASA, or so-called rocket technology, really it's helium balloons. They don't do rockets, but nonetheless, with Wernher von Braun, he had ties to Walt Disney. And in this section of my book, in the Flat Earth Manifesto, I'm showing the undeniable, non-debatable tie between sci-fi and entertainment and real so-called space science, how these things are completely tied at the hip. They always work together. Wernher von Braun, this guy is the leading rocket technician of NASA, one of the founders of NASA. He's friends with Walt Disney, and this encouraged me to look more into Disney and Disney World and Tomorrowland. Now, Me, I grew up in a Pakistani home. I didn't know nothing about Disneyland, okay? I always saw Disneyland, and I don't mean to make fun of you guys at all, and I'm not trying to be mean, because of course there are good, righteous white people out there, right? There's Brother Sam Gerrans, I have nothing but respect for him. There's good, righteous, honorable people, but I always saw Disney World as more of like a white person, a Westerner thing. It's just not something that Pakistanis are into. Pakistanis don't take their kids to Disney World. I looked it up online. I was just typing up what makes Disney World so special. Why is it such a big deal? Like, do I just go and see Mickey Mouse in a costume? Why are kids obsessed with it? And to my surprise, like I said, I came to this point because it's part of my research, right? I'm looking into Werner von Braun and Walt Disney. And I realized that Disney World, it's not just Mickey Mouse in a costume. To me, this is news. It surprises me that literally it's a theme park that takes up like an entire street, and they literally take the kid and they immerse them into the world of Disney. It's not just the costumes and the characters, it's the music, it's the sets. Like, you actually feel like you're legitimately in Finding Nemo. I saw this one ride where I can't believe this. Like I said, I know nothing about Walt Disney. Pakistanis, we don't do this, okay? This is like a Western, white person thing, okay? You know, they actually take the kid, they put him in a submarine, and they take him down into like Finding Nemo land, under the water, where you see Nemo, you see, what's the other character's name? Dory or Dorothy? All the different characters, and I'll have a video of it up on the screen. And I just thought, wow, this doesn't go on in Afghanistan, okay? We don't have a Disney World in Afghanistan, right? And this is related to that mindset of just catering to the world of the child. And I always saw it as vain. You know, who cares if the kid is smiling and happy because they're talking to Goofy and Daffy Duck? There's even like a dine-in with characters. You can sit and eat, and you know, Daffy Duck can come along and dance with you, and you can shake hands with Daffy Duck and hug him, and it's all fantasy. I thought, like, do people actually take their kids to enjoy this stuff? And I'm not saying it's wrong to enjoy things with your kids. Just enjoy reality. Enjoy reality. Have fun. Have games. That's fine. Go out and play sports. But when you're indulging the kid in fantasy land, like, at some point, that ticket is going to expire. The kid's going to have to leave Disney World, and he's going to realize that none of it was real. He literally talked to made-up fictional characters, people being paid in costumes. And I just think to myself, the West is so infantile. We're so childish. We cater to the world of children. And then when these kids grow up, this has been happening for a while now, for the past maybe 40, 50 years. Now when these kids grow up, which is what we see now, the adults nowadays, they're just like overgrown children. Why can't they seem to use logic and reason? Why are they so obsessed and tied with their emotions? They think that their emotional fluctuations, that's the most important thing in life. Like, whatever they're feeling at the moment, they're not able to use their reason. They're not able to accept hard facts, like the difference between men and women. That men were created a degree above women. Not just because the scriptures say it, but it's just obvious, right? Men and women have very clear differences. On top of that, just you know, the harshness of the scriptures, the harsh reality of the afterlife, that there's only two destinations man can be at, one or the other. Either he can go to the garden forever or hell forever, where he's burning in eternal conscious torment, right? These are very hard realities, and people seem to be unable to accept them because it hurts their emotions. And I can't help but feel that this comes somehow from the babying we receive from when we're young, the babying, where the child at a young age is taught that the whole world is to conform around him just by the mindset and how the adults are. And of course, in the end, even somebody with that kind of a mindset, or that kind of an upbringing, if God decides to guide them, God decides to bring them to the straightness of the way and put the scriptures in their heart, there's nothing stopping that. Of course, in the end, God guides whom he wills, but I don't think that that's helping. And it's just something I've reflected on. I see it's very different. You know, I've always felt alienated to my society, because even though I grew up in the West, I grew up in a Pakistani home, we do things very, very differently to how Westerners do here, right? I've always felt alienated and weird, you know. I didn't feel babied in that way. My mom wasn't constantly calling me handsome and beautiful all the time. That's another thing I noticed. They always called me, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful. I was never told that as a kid. I was never spoiled and gassed up in that way. You know, it was just, I was expected to respect the adults and conform to the adult world. Not saying we didn't go and have fun. Of course, you know, my parents, every now and then, you know, when they had the time, they would take me out to like a zoo, and I would see lions. I would get close to God's creation. I would see certain animals, but never like Disneyland and catering to the world of children. Never fiction. And I'm very fortunate in that way. Not fortunate, I'm very blessed in that way, because there's no fortune. Fortune doesn't exist. There's no chance. Everything's either a blessing or a curse from God. I'm very blessed to have grown up in a Pakistani home where I was constantly reminded day in and day out of the hellfire. My mom was big on that, always telling me about hellfire. You got to save yourself from the hellfire. And I was acquainted with reality at a very young age, and I just don't see that in the West. I don't see that in the West. And I think if this continues, and I just see this happening more and more, it just gets worse and worse, the goo-goo gaga-ing of kids, you know? It's getting worse and worse. I just see in the future, like my generation, which grew up on this, soon we're going to be the 40, 50, 60-year-olds. We're going to be the ones taking control of society. We're going to be the ones, we're going to be the elders, right? I just see a totally infantile, childish, stupid world being created here, or being produced here by this mindset. It's just unbelievable, man. It's unbelievable. And never really reflected on it till now, that my upbringing is very different to how people are growing up here in the West. But anyways, man, that's really all I have to say on the matter. I hope this talk was a blessing. I hope my reflections maybe make you think of things a little bit more, maybe how you deal with your kids. And like I said, take it with a grain of salt, because I'm not a father yet. Perhaps, you would know better than me, right? Maybe don't even listen to me. Go listen to people like Brother Sam, Brother Side, people who have children and stuff, who have gone into that phase in their life. But it's just something I've noticed. It's something I've noticed. And it's more so not with the women. I think it's natural a little bit for the woman to goo goo gaga kids, not to make the kid feel like the world should conform to them, but just to be more soft and sweet and kissy and cuddly. But it's the men, when the men do it, specifically when the fathers do it to their sons, I just see it as an embarrassing failure. But like I said, that's all I gotta say on the matter. Hope the talk was a blessing. And yeah, peace to you. Remember, deceit abounds, so keep your eyes wide open. Peace out.
Assalamu alaikum, men. My name is Walid Naeem, and I have dedicated my entire life towards spreading the truth about the words of God. And I don't know about you, but personally, I have grown sick and tired of all these mainstream religions, and specifically the mosques, which have utterly failed us. I'm fed up with them placing the words of man, specifically their fabricated hadiths, at a higher authority than God's holy scriptures, their lack of knowledge about conspiracy facts and realpolitik, and their complete ignorance of the true nature of our earth. I've had enough of their compromise, their weakness, their lame sermons which put people to sleep, their virtue signaling, their fear of facing any real persecution, and their willingness to let the quote-unquote secular atheist utterly trample over them. The atheists own all of the educational boards and teach their propaganda to every so-called Muslim and quote-unquote non-Muslim child here in the West. And now with the Toyota Corolla hoax, the atheist has successfully broken apart our communities and made us utter slaves to their government. Our so-called quote-unquote Muslim sons are a bunch of wannabe hood rat gangsters who vape, drink, smoke weed, and party like animals. And our so-called quote-unquote Muslim daughters are not much different. They have no interest in hearing about the Word of God. They are all too busy YOLOing. This has all happened while the imams have been living very comfortably off of the hard-earned money of their community members in the donation bins. As stated before, I personally am completely fed up with this. The mosques have had all of the support, funding, enfranchisement, and time of our communities and have produced absolutely nothing. The atheist has made the so-called quote-unquote Muslim man his bitch. He has steamrolled him in every way possible. That is why I created Eyes Wide Open. This channel exists as a call to action for all of those strong believing men who trust in their Lord fully and refuse to compromise the Quran. It is time the true sons of Adam and the inheritors of the tremendous tradition, in other words, the true Quranic Muslims, to set up something for themselves and fearlessly stand up against the madness that is going on in the world. What you see with my channel right now is only the beginning. These short videos I make in my car are all that I have time for right now, working a full-time job. I scribble these together while at work and make these videos while running errands. But you ain't seen nothing yet. If God should will, I have so much more in store for Eyes Wide Open. I want this to be a platform for the believers. Just a couple of things I have planned for this channel is, firstly, creating scholarly books, documentaries, and essays to arm you guys with the intellectual firepower for dealing with all of our enemies. Secondly, I would like Eyes Wide Open to be a center for heavy activism, public and street preaching, going to City Hall, organizing protests, knocking doors, going to baseball, hockey, soccer, basketball, and other major sporting events and preaching to the people leaving the stadium, going to the totally failed mosques, synagogues, and churches and debating with their religious leaders, going to universities and debating the quote-unquote secular professors on their laughable so-called science, and much more. It's time the believers start to fight back and shake the cage of this disgusting system. My goal is to create a base for the believers. I want people to know of our name, that there are dedicated, zealous, and studious men who do not compromise the word of God, and we are ready to take action. If we keep waiting for our mosque to do something about the real problems of this world, then we will be waiting until Judgment Day. We need to create something now from the ground up. With that being said, may God bless us in all of our endeavors and guide us every step of the way. If this sounds like something you are interested in, and if you want to be a part of the movement, then you can help me out. My Patreon and PayPal are linked in the description of every video, and, God willing, if enough generous believers decide to fund this platform, then I can quit my full-time job and look for something part-time, or, even better than that, leave employment completely, which will give me more hours in the day to do this work. I do not care to be rich. All of that stuff is vanity anyways. But the fact of the matter is, my wife and I need to eat and have a roof over our heads. So, if you wish to support the cause, then I thank you sincerely for that and promise to fight with might and main in the cause of God for the believers. If you are not able to, hey, then I totally understand. Find somebody else who needs that money and give it to them. Give it out of fear of your Lord and in dread of that great and terrible day, which is coming to all of us. For all of the believers out there, the brothers and sisters who follow hard upon the truth, all I can say is much love to each and every one of you. May God reward you in this life and the hereafter. Praise goes to God alone. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Peace.